Well, what is it that the pros are doing that I do not even think about in the normal round? How does that then apply to the rest of my life? Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Links for Life. And we're going to have a great time today with just a lot of fun discussion, hopefully some things that will be very helpful. A little while back, Joe and I shared some thoughts from after watching the Champions Tour, which came to Richmond a few months ago, and some of the things we learned from that. And so we want to do something a little bit similar to that in today's episode. But this came about because I love to watch golf. And I feel like kind of just my nature is such that I'm really observant when I'm watching golf. And so just a few weeks ago, I was watching the Hero World Championship, one of the first tournaments of the year, just casually watching it. And I noticed Scotty Scheffler putting. And I watched him putt, and I went, whoa, that was really different. And so about a hole or two later, I watched him, and he did the same thing. I noticed when he was putting, he was so utterly still that it just blew my mind away. It was like he had this body, and the only thing that moved in the entire swing was his arms. And it was like there was no room for the putter head to ever get off track. So I thought, man, I've got to go try that. So I immediately came downstairs to my little putting green, and I just tried to emulate what Scotty was doing. And that just got me thinking about all of the different ways that we can just observe that the pros do golf differently from how I do it, from how the typical amateur does it. So I thought we would just dive a little bit deeper into those things that we want to emulate and that we can benefit from by emulating what the pros do. So this episode is kind of about what the pros do.
I love this a lot. I think it's really cool to me that you saw it and then you wanted to go downstairs and emulate it. Because when you told me about this topic, what I think is fun about it is, as a child, I think that's what we naturally do. I think about, for me, I wasn't a golfer until recently, but it was baseball. Right. It was all about baseball with our family. And we'd be watching it, and like immediately it would be like first inning, and we'd have to start like playing it, and then we would pitch like they did, and then we would start to emulate our swing the way they did, our stance, all the stuff. We'd start pulling up our rolling up our socks the way that they did, all the things. And then you'd go play with your friends, and it'd be like the Jeter throw and everything else. And it just seems like at some point we start to lose that. But as kids, what we naturally do is watch these people and see what we can learn and start to emulate it.
It's so true. We watch things so much more carefully as a child, and then copy it, and then we get to be an adult and we kind of get lazy, and we see things but we don't really pay attention. So I'm really aware of this now because just over the last couple of years, I'm a granddad, and our oldest grandchild just turned 2, and surprisingly Braden is absolutely fanatically obsessed with golf.
Surprisingly,
yeah, exactly. But it's so fun to watch how he does things. So we just celebrated his 2nd birthday, and his Uncle Chris got him a golf bag, and it has his name on it. And when he opened it up, his eyes got amazingly big, and he immediately put it on his shoulder, just like everybody, and started parading around the room with it.
I love that.
And it was so cute. And he was immediately, golf clubs, wanted to know where the golf clubs were. And then Weezy and I got him a putting green. Really, really cute. So he immediately, when he got home, they put it kind of in their kitchen, and it's not just a little mat, but it actually has holes and everything in it. And he didn't want to just go putt on it. He had to go get his golf hat and then find his golf bag
Got to do what the golfers did.
Yeah. And then he put all of those on, and he looked at, I guess, his mom, and he said, I'm dad.
I love that.
So, because my son Alex is also a big golfer. So he just immediately starts emulating and copying everything he sees his dad doing as a golfer, and then he sees me doing, from dress to posture to swing, and it's just crazy. And he's just so we can learn so much just by copying, by imitating.
Well, I mean, if you think about childhood, that's the way so many things are learned. And what season do you have more development than childhood? And so why do we think then that as we get to adults that we stop being able to learn in that way? And yes, as a child, maybe there's a blind copying of everything that happens, and maybe more critical thinking comes in later. But wouldn't that principle still be a way that we learn?
Well, and what I see is that the only place where I see that happening with adults is some sense, we don't do a very good job of it, of emulating someone's swing. We might say on a full swing, well, I'm trying to do this or that. But I think we miss so much in not emulating the non-swing things that golfers do. Because 95% of what we do in a 4-hour round is not swing the golf club. It's all the things that prepare us, that set us up to be able to swing the way we want to swing. So this episode a little bit, and some of these ideas, as I then sat down to think, well, what is it that I see that the pros are doing, if I'm really observant and pay attention, that they're doing that I do not even think about in the normal round? And is there something for me to learn? And then that sparked for me, how does that then apply to the rest of my life? Because these non-swing things that they do, I think, parallel so many things that I talk about on Space for Life, my other podcast, that helps us to live well. So if it helps these pros, the very, very best, play golf well, I bet they could help us live well.
I like that. So all 5 of these are not swing related. They're just, I guess, like principles that they're embracing over their round.
Yes. Because I play decent golf, and I do help people with their swings, but there are better people than me for helping someone, swing technically well. And I honestly know pretty well how to swing technically well. That doesn't help me when I'm out on the course. And it's usually the non-swing things that sabotage why all of a sudden I tighten up or I get quick. So we're talking about the non-swing things that we might learn from and emulate from the pros.
I love it. And then how we can, if we allow it and bring intentionality into it, how we can allow that to impact our lives outside of golf.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny as I made this list and I started to think, okay, well, if I kind of reflecting back, what is it that I see the pros doing that we can learn from? And really almost as and after I made that list, I went, man, that fits so well into life. So it wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't really intentionally to say, okay, what's the parallel lesson? It was like, oh, it's so obvious what the lesson is for the rest of our lives.
But that's the beauty of Links for Life to me. It's not that we're trying to take golf and then make it something that it's not and draw a parallel to life. It's that they just naturally, it is a microcosm.
Yeah, I don't think we're manufacturing this. I don't think we're just trying to shove golf into a life and life into golf. I think these things really do have parallels. And that actually occurred in my mind for years and years before I ever decided to start Links for Life. I had all sorts of ideas that were flowing in my mind about these parallels that I was finding that I could even share, just in a normal Bible study or in a coaching session with a client, that always was going back to golf analogies. So it kind of was natural for me to then say, let's try a podcast of this.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we jump into it?
Yeah.
What's the first observation?
Yeah. Some of these, if you've been listening to Links for Life, or you're going to go, oh, I've heard that before. But, we kind of need some repetition in order to do this. So the first thing that I really notice if you watch the pro golfers is they just take their time. You never get a sense that they're rushing. I mean, you could go to the typical tournament and you could take away all of the crowds, and these pros would just look like they're out having a casual round of golf. Yeah, they're paying attention to things, but they're walking, just typical average speed. They're walking in a relaxed manner. They get up to their ball and they kind of set their clubs up. They start to talk with their caddy like just they're having a casual conversation. And then eventually go, okay, I'm going to hit a shot. And they hit it and they kind of watch where it goes, put the club back and go on. They are always in an unrushed manner. And there's several things that I noticed when I thought about this that I think is unusual. I don't know if you've noticed this. Do you notice how much the pros eat when they're playing a round of golf?
Yeah.
It's almost this habit. They'll hit a shot and they'll go over to their bag, and usually they'll just quickly reach down and they'll grab their bottle of water and they'll just drink a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then it seems like they go through about 10 energy bars around. It's like every fairway, they're pulling out another bar or banana to eat. And it's just like this thing that's just relaxing them.
Right. Well, I wonder about that, where there's definitely an aspect of it where it's a 4-hour round. And so you're trying to maintain blood sugar and nutrients and all that. But I wonder how much of that is just this mechanism that helps them settle into the moment and slow down, where I'm going to eat and that's going to be what helps me ground me in this moment.
Exactly. It just helps me get into what we talked about in the last episode or a recent episode of that refresh box of, okay, I've hit the shot. I've processed that I just hit it way to the right. I need to stop thinking about it. Let me grab an energy bar.
Right.
And just
kind
of walk down.
This.
Yeah. Now I'm going to kind of walk and relax for a little bit, and then I'll deal with whatever I have to deal with in a couple of minutes. Right. There is a book, and I've talked about this a lot in Space for Life. I don't know that I've talked about it in Links for Life. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And so the story behind it is this very prominent pastor who was getting ready to move to a mega church and lead a really large organization, that went to his older mentor and named Dallas Willard. This was John Ortberg. And he went to me, he said, so Dallas, what wisdom do you have for me as I go enter this huge, overwhelming opportunity? And so Dallas looked at him and he said, ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And John Ortberg looked at him and went, okay, that's good. So what else? And he just looked at him. He said, ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. That was all he had to tell him. It was like, if you do this one thing, this take your time that we're talking about, then the other things tend to fall into place. If you do not do this one thing, if you rush, if you allow yourself to get tense, if you press, push, try hard, then everything else tends to fall apart. Mm-hmm. What do we do as amateurs? We push, we try, we get stressed, we get tense, angry, we carry one shot to the next shot, we hurry, all of these things that the pros don't do. And I think they actually sabotage all of the work that we do on the range to have a quality tempo swing.
Right. And I think what I love about it is the acknowledging of the interconnectedness between the two, where I heard a pro say to someone who was struggling with tempo, walk slower, like just walk slower to it. And it's just acknowledging that the way that I walk is going to impact the way that I swing. And in life, you know, the way that I'm running out of the house is going to impact the way that I show up at the meeting. And for some reason, I think we like to ignore that aspect and just pretend like, well, no, I'm leaving here and my meeting's here. What do you mean the way that I left the house is the way that I show up to the meeting?
Right. We think that they're disconnected, that one doesn't have anything to do with the other. And yet, you know, one of the best things, I mean, we've talked about this again on other episodes. If you hit a bad shot, slow your walk down. If you hit a bad shot, look up at the trees. You know, do something to get that out of your system, to change that too fast rhythm, that too much tension in your golf swing, so that by the time you get to the next shot, you can do what you intend to do.
I love that. And for that book, are you talking about the one from John Mark Comer or?
Well, John Mark Comer wrote the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Harry, from that conversation that John Ortberg had with Dallas Willard.
I forgot that story. I love that so much.
And it's a great book.
Great book.
And again, you could read a book like that and have some of the principles from that, and you could say, I'm going to take that onto the golf course.
Right.
And it would work because they are the same thing. You know, and we almost always are a version of who we are in regular life when we go out onto the golf course. That's worth paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, you're not talking about becoming Patrick Cantlay, right?
Oh, no. Yeah. No. Yeah.
There's a happy medium we're talking about.
No, I am not talking about becoming ice, you know, out there. I'm actually talking about being relaxed.
Right.
Yeah. And even for those whose natural temperament isn't necessarily to be relaxed, to be who they are. And we're going to come back to that. But at whoever you are, rushing doesn't work. So I remember way back, one of the golfers I used to follow because he was from Richmond was Lanny Watkins. And Lanny Watkins had the fastest tempo. He was kind of like John Rahm. That tempo is really fast, but it is always the same. It's never rushed in terms of what he's doing. So we are all still very individual, but rushing, I'm convinced, doesn't work for anybody.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Anything else you would say about this before we jump into the second one?
Yeah. Again, you can observe these things. If you're just casually watching a golf tournament, you can kind of notice some things that might surprise you. So one of the things you'll notice every now and then, it doesn't happen that often on the pro tours, is that a group will get a slow play warning. And anytime that happens, the announcers jump on and go, oh, this is going to mess up their game, you know, because they're going to have to speed up. It's going to change the rhythm and everything. And I've watched the groups, the different groups over the years that get those slow play warnings, and I never see them change their speed. It's like they get that. They might have, you know, this slight kind of reaction of annoyance at it, and then they walk down at the same speed they've always walked down. Somewhere they maybe in some minute way change their pace, you know, but they really change virtually nothing, even after someone's jumped on their case and said, we're going to penalize you because you're playing too slow.
Okay.
They don't change a thing. Okay, yeah, and they go about their business. It shows how significant and how committed they are to a normal, repeatable, unrushed pace for their game.
And I think about it where it could be easy to look at it and just be like, oh, well, they're just going slow, like it's haphazardly happening. in the way that you maybe are driving on a long road trip and get in a conversation, start slowing down, and then you think of the warning, you're like, oh, I realize I've slowed down in speed, let me speed back up. But I think the fact that they don't change shows how deliberate it is to them. It's not that I'm just slow, it's intentional, it's steady.
Yeah, and in the end, they're not playing fast, but they're also not playing slow.
Right.
They find ways to be able to read the greens while the other player's preparing for their putts, to be preparing and looking at the hole ahead of them in the yardage book while the other person's doing it. So they're not really playing slow. They've just determined a normal process for taking their time.
So we mentioned this in the intro, but one of the things that we love with Links for Life is taking these principles that are true on a golf course and in our life and unpacking them a little bit more.
Yes.
And so as we think about this slowness, I know we touched on it a little bit, but I'm just curious what you would say of what we can, if we took some time to become intentional with this, how could we allow this to impact our lives?
Yeah, and so I want to get into maybe a little bit more precision when we talk about how do we apply this to life. And I've found very much for me that when I practice this, I am living at my best, at my most enjoyable, and at my most impactful. So the life version of taking your time that I noticed with the pros is what I would call unrushed focus with a rhythm of rest. Unrushed focus with a rhythm of rest. So what you find with the pros is that this slow, the deliberate pacing, the taking their time is what allows them to maintain an incredibly high level of focus. So unrushed and focused go together. So this whole practice of taking their time is what enables them to have a much higher level of focus than we generally have when we're playing a round of golf. That same thing applies in our lives. If we could enter into the tasks, the processes, the meals, all of the different activities with an unrushed focus, how much better we would be. And in a sense, we often call that presence. But so you have that unrushed focus with a rhythm of rest, because we can't always maintain unrushed focus. That would be like going from one shot to another shot with absolute no time in between it. What they do is they give that unrushed focus and then this nice, enjoyable rhythm of rest back into unrushed focus. So I find for myself that if I can give unrushed focus to an activity, pause for a moment, catch my breath, rest for a moment, then I can enter into another activity without that much time and go right back into that unrushed focus. Take a rhythm of rest, unrushed focus. And that's what I find enables me at times to manage an incredibly busy day with a lot on the plate without being overwhelmed, because I'm going back and forth between this mode of unrushed focus, doing a podcast like we're doing now. And then after we do this podcast, I'll pause and I'll rest for a minute. And then I'll have a lunch scheduled. And I can give that unrushed focus to that. Catch my breath, relax for a moment, enjoy maybe something outside for a minute, and enter back into it. So it's the version of what I see the pros doing on the golf course, where they're giving this incredibly calm focus, hitting a golf shot, walking down the fairway with an energy bar in their hands. Mm-hmm. That's the way I think we live our best lives.
Maybe this is only helpful for me, but I think I can tend to look at it as that starting and stopping, that they're playing golf and they stop and they play, or you're going through your life and then you stop and you rest and you start again. And lately I've just been, I guess, starting to pivot my perspective on it, where I'm realizing there's this trail that transitions between everything. And that's why I love like this rhythm. It's like this fluidity. It's like you're driving a boat instead of a car, where it takes longer to start and you can't slam on brakes. Like things just have to like kind of gradually glide to a stop.
Glide, yes.
And so the same way, it's they're not stopping golf. They just know that their next shot is impacted by everything that happens before too. And so that unrushed rhythm is how you enter
I
it.
love that word glide, because there is a gliding that goes on, which is very different from this start-stop that sometimes people think we're talking about here. No, it's a move and a glide, back into a move and a glide, a kind of a continuous rhythm, as we talked about, that creates an incredibly enjoyable.
Right. And it's this anticipation where it's, if I have this podcast at 2:00 and I want to show up this way, well, I don't just magically walk in at 1:59 and then transition into it. It takes this anticipation of what do I want to create, and then how do I start, and then be able to glide into it.
Yeah, I will say that this does not come for me or for many people naturally.
Right.
So, today happens to be a pretty busy day for me. And in my morning time, I had to spend some time gathering myself and my mindset to go, okay, I've got a lot going today. Just catch your breath, take a nice deep breath, think about it, enter into each one with this unrushed focus. And just go from one to another, and it'll all be fine. You can handle whatever comes. And so I prepped myself for a full day with this mindset of just enter into it with unrushed focus and a beautiful, enjoyable rhythm of rest in between.
I know we've talked about this point a little bit, but one last thing I think is helpful with it, when you're saying coming natural, I am one of the most type B people that you can meet. I love the idea of freedom, just do what I want to do naturally when I want. However, but I've realized because of it, to have that, I need routine and rhythm and structure. Otherwise, I can't live into that freedom. It actually crushes me. And so it's just, to your point there, it doesn't necessarily come naturally, but this like planning and routine actually provides freedom when I might think that that's going to be stifling.
Well, and that's actually a perfect segue into the number 2 observation that I had, which is that the pros, in the midst of that unrushed focus and rhythm of rest, they never abandon their routines. And the routines are the pathway to what I call disciplined freedom. And so their routines have this way of bringing out the best in them. It gives them the freedom to execute everything that they've worked on in the range, all of their processes, and to execute those processes at the very highest level, because they're not being clouded by monkey mind that's, hitting them about all of the things that are going on around them outside of the ropes, and, oh, this gust of wind came up, and, oh, the leaderboard just changed. They are so settled in their routines, which we talked about in just a couple episodes ago, this think box, play box, memory box, rest, refresh box. And so they have those routines that allow them to then operate at their best. And as you said, for your personality that would love to just be, in the wind, that you can actually enjoy that the most when you layer on some level of discipline and routine that you operate with.
I love that phrase, disciplined freedom. It feels like an oxymoron, but
it does, yes.
But when you said that, I'm like, yes, I get it. That's what I'm talking about, where my best days are the ones I would consider disciplined freedom.
Well, as I talked about even this morning, This morning is a great example. I have a lot going on today. My morning routine that I have, which is a spacious routine, to center myself with God and to center myself around what is in store for the day and what happened yesterday. It is that routine which I am vigilant about. I'll get up at ridiculous hours in the morning to give myself enough time if I happen to have a really early breakfast or something like that, because I know that routine, that discipline is what enables me to relax and enjoy. And had I not done this morning, I don't think my head would be in the right place. And I still have to work it, of course, and all of that, but it's the discipline that enables the freedom. That's such an unusual thing, but it's powerful for people.
Right. And I think this is where, and as we grasp it for life, golf makes it very accessible, because as we talked about on the pre-shot routine episode, well, I guess it was the golf environment episode, but we talked a lot about pre-shot routine. And the pre-shot routine is critical to be able to settle in and just perform and just be, to bring the practice game in, to bring the swing, to bring everything. You have to have this pre-shot routine that just settles you into it.
Yes.
And so then if we're thinking about it with life, that carries over naturally, where to settle into what we want in our daily lives, it needs this pre-shot routine, if you will.
Right. And I think a lot of people mistake this idea of routine for ruts. They think, well, if I'm going to, do the same thing, how do I avoid getting in a rut? And yet, one of the things that you notice when you watch the professional golfers is that they all have a routine, but their routine is very, very individual. Their pre-shot routine is very individual. You can look at someone like Jordan Spieth, and he and his caddy are talking a mile a minute before each shot. I mean, they are just going at it, talking about all of the different elements, whereas some golfers don't necessarily talk all that much. You look at Justin Rose, and he has this really strange pre-shot routine move, and almost all the golfers do, and they may change over time, but the need for the routine actually is enabling the best. It isn't a rut. And they are smart enough to know that if that routine ever becomes a rut, they change their routine, but they always count on the discipline of a routine to help them operate with freedom and operate at the best.
And I again, bringing it back to the discipline freedom, I feel like there's this both and that happens throughout the day, where if you're thinking about a schedule, being really disciplined in certain areas allows freedom later in the day or in between meetings or whatever it is. And I think about diet's an interesting one too, where I think people look at it and you're like, well, if I want to track calories, track macros, whatever, I've got to have every single meal the same way. And I know Alex Hormozy actually talks about this, of he's really diligent about breakfast and lunch and eats the same things then to free up dinner to be able to have business meetings or whatever he wants with family and friends. And you know what I mean? It's like the discipline earlier allows more freedom than you would think for a normal diet at dinner, and allows you to accomplish your goals better.
Yeah. So one of the very disciplined routines that I have is, as I develop my list of things that I need to get done, I will never add something to that list without adding a priority to it. So I have with a program that I use called Todoist, it enables me to list a priority as 1, 2, 3, or 4. So I have in my mind what each one of those priorities means. And so I never just randomly add things to the list without giving just a moment's thought as to where that fits in the priority. So then when I go to my list, I'm already having pre-thought through what the importance and urgency is of a particular task. I'm not starting at zero. And so I've developed that discipline, that routine of how I go about setting a task that helps me operate at the best. we have things like that, on a golf course. Some people have a routine. I've seen them when they tee a ball up with their driver, they immediately set the driver head behind it to see how much of the ball is showing above it to make sure that they've teed it at exactly the right height. It's just a process, a routine that they go through that they know is going to help them. Discipline, freedom. Discipline so that we can operate freely at the best we can as athletes.
So good. Third one. We ready to jump to it or anything else on this before we go on?
No, we're going to jump to this, and this is going to potentially step on some toes.
I like that.
It's stepped on my toes a lot over the years. The pros have this tremendous ability to control their emotions. Now, I need to qualify that a bit. Controlling their emotions doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. Each pro has, I think, a way of managing their emotions that works for them, that enables them to experience a round without their emotions sabotaging their performance. And that's different for each pro. So we talked about in a previous episode, Tiger's habit, if we're telling the story correctly, that he has a 10-foot circle that he's allowed himself to get angry. And that when he walks outside of that circle after the shot, he has to let it go. He's not telling himself, I'm not going to get angry.
Right.
He's saying, I'm going to contain that in a very manageable way such that it's not going to sabotage my shot. Others manage their emotions simply by choosing not to let anger get into their games. For my operating the best, I am best if I can limit anger as much as possible. Now, I don't do that perfectly by any means. So if I don't do it perfectly and I get angry, and I do get angry on the golf course because I really love the game
Not
and
me.
I care about it.
Not me.
you. Okay. Man, I need to take some
You're on
lessons
here.
from you.
I've never thrown a club.
If not very far, at
Yes.
least. Yeah. If I do get angry, I try to catch it quickly and then let myself go on. And by doing that, it helps me play my best. So the people that I think the game can get away is when they let their anger get beyond their standards of where they want to let their anger go. And so I think each person would do the best, as I think the pros have done, of saying, where will emotions play in my game? For some, it's allowing it in a particular way, but not too far. For others, it's I'm really not going to allow it in at all. And each person's differently. I watched again. I've really love to kind of just watch the pros closely. I think it was a clip, and I didn't even know who it was, but this pro had a 3-foot putt. It was about as close to a gimme as you could get.
Straight putt.
Straight putt. And he hit the putt, and it didn't even hit the hole. He pushed it right, clearly, and it was just about six inches past. I didn't even see him react in any form. He simply moved from the 3-foot, went to the 6-inch putt, tapped it in, picked up the ball, and went, I can't even fathom as a human being missing a putt that short without a reaction. But that was how he did it. It's not how I do if I miss a 3-foot putt, but it's helpful to think from the perspective that I think all of the pros do the best they can. They know that if I control, manage, have parameters around my emotions, then I allow myself to play the best. If I let my emotions get the best of me, I'm not. And when we go back to the fundamental, we talked about a lot on Links for Life, that this game is for fun. You know, why would we allow our negative emotions to play in? So one of the practices that I work on, very imperfectly, but I work on, is trying to be what I call agnostic about bad shots and excited about good shots. So if I hit a bad shot, I do the best I can to really not react very much to it. Kind of almost be curious about it. When I hit a good shot, I try to get pumped up. I'll do the fist pump, do all sorts of stuff. I will even, yes, you know, I'll get really excited because our brain pays attention to the excitement piece. So if I get excited about a shot in a positive way, the brain goes, okay, we can handle more of that. If I'm just agnostic or curious, then the brain isn't really giving a lot of attention to that bad shot. So I think it's almost a neurological way of managing, controlling even our good emotions to our benefit.
I like that. I think it's interesting controlling emotions. Sometimes I can hear that as like what you're saying, don't have emotions. And the word control assumes that inherently there are emotions that you are then like harnessing and directing in some order, right? Like you're controlling them. One of the things that it's interesting to me is I feel like if you completely stifle emotions, they come out in some other way. Maybe not on a golf round. Maybe not. It's 4 hours. Maybe you can hold it and it comes out in life somewhere else, which is a different problem.
Which is even more dangerous.
Even more dangerous. And then if you feed it too much, it grows past what it should be. So I feel like there's this balance point where it's like acknowledging it enough so you're not ignoring it, but then you're not feeding it and letting it grow past what it is. And I just feel like that is, for me, sometimes a really tough balance to hit. I tend to live outside of those lines more than between them.
Well, and I think really a great way of moving past that is realizing that when we're talking about emotions, we're talking about positive and negative ones. And we tend to immediately jump when we talk about controlling our emotions to our negative ones, you know, as if, well, the only emotions we have are negative ones. Well, I would actually feed the positive emotions as much as controlling and managing the negative ones. So it'd be an interesting exercise for your next golf round to think about how your emotions show and to try to consciously say, I'm going to be calm about the negative ones and I'm going to be exuberant about the positive ones. I'm going to really jump up and down about the made putt, you know, that I made, or the really good shot. You know, I love to have the reaction, you know, that pure iron shot. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. And it's funny, I've done that sometimes, and the people I'm playing with have the immediate reaction of, well, what was wrong with that? Because they saw my emotional reaction. Went, no, I loved it. It's like, oh, I've never seen anybody react that's positively.
I literally do the exact opposite in a round of golf. I hit a shot that's good, and instead of feeding that, I'm like, it wasn't that good. Like, get back in place, and then it's got the other side of it where if I do something bad, I'm like, yeah, you're right, you're horrible. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's a perfect place to flip it. Let's give all of our emotion to the positive things and tamp down the negative. So golf is a perfect place to try that. So then the parallel, I think, for our life is what I call practiced self-control. So we have this ideal that people talk about of being self-controlled. But what we don't talk about often is that only comes about by practicing it. So we can learn, we can begin in our normal everyday life to practice self-control. At home is a great place to practice self-control, those things that irritate us? Can we learn to just let it wash over us, not give it a lot of thought, but get really animated about the good things going on? Full of gratitude. Gratitude is an emotion, full of gratitude, and yet agnostic about things that don't go our way.
Yeah.
Practicing self-control in our lives and in our relationships and in the uncontrollable things that happen in our day, the person cutting in front of us, the car. Can we practice? Great occasion to practice self-control when we're in our cars.
Right.
Then carry that over onto the golf course.
Like that. And what you're not saying here is that something like negative happens and you just try to flip it in your brain, be like, oh, yay, I'm so glad that's what happened. You know what I mean? Like, it's not some fake thing that you're
right.
It's more of acknowledging that there's the good and the bad and feeding more of the good and addressing or being curious or redirecting some of the negative, right?
Yeah. One of the powerful books so many people have read is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a victim of the Holocaust. And what he wrote about, and I'm paraphrasing this and not paraphrasing it well, is that we control so little in life, but the one thing that we have control over is our response. And so he was writing out of the Holocaust, and he was saying, my captors can do anything to me. They can beat me, they can take away everything, but what they can't take away is my response to what's happening. And I think that is such a powerful thing in all of our lives, that we are going to have all sorts of things that happen that we don't want to happen. And nobody's kidding and saying they're not bad things. But what we have the choice in is how we respond to those things. And that's true on the golf course, and that's true in life. And that will change our lives if we learn, in this sense, that practice self-control to control how we respond, particularly emotionally, to the things that happen to us. Okay, so now we get to what I would consider the fourth lesson, and we're kind of lasering in on this, but it's very helpful because I think that what I have seen in my own golf game that I thought I was doing well, that I realize now I'm somewhat lazy about, is giving attention to each shot. So now we're saying, okay, we've got some of this unrushed focus with a rhythm of rest. We're controlling our emotions. We're now approaching a particular shot. The pros do so much better job at giving really detailed attention to each shot. And we've talked about this a little bit in other episodes, but it's worth reminding that the pros operate like a laser when it comes down to a shot. They're not just saying, this shot's going to break a little bit left to right. They're thinking this is, 2 inches and it's 94% of the pace. And they're thinking so precisely, when they're evaluating a shot, and they're coming to the conclusion that this shot needs to go at this trajectory with a slight bend, with this kind of swing, and it's going to come and it's going to land exactly on this spot. I love it when I hear pros talking about their short game. And what they're giving tremendous focus to is, I'm not trying to hit kind of just a general bump and run shot. I'm hitting a bump and run shot that is going to land on the green at this exact spot with this amount of spin and this amount of height. They're thinking about it so precisely, and then they step in and then they just execute. But they are giving a level of focus that I realize that I'm just stepping up and saying, okay, I'm going to hit hopefully a little bit of a draw and start it, a little bit right of the pin and end up a little bit, of this and a little bit of that. And there's so much lack of precision. If we could learn to think, for instance, we've talked again about this in another episode, that we come to a precise to the yard distance that we're trying to hit it. That factors in elevation, that factors in wind, that factors in temperature, that factors in the landing spot and how much the shot is likely to release based on the club. And we now are saying, I'm trying to hit this shot 124 yards. The shot might be only 115, but I'm hitting a 124-yard shot. How much that would help us. Well, do we think that?
Right.
No. Do we think I'm just hitting a full wedge? Well, a full wedge, how far?
Right.
So I think that would help us. The pros do that. Then if we could take that same level of precision, which I talk about as a kind of a relaxed presence into our activities. So I even think about this with something like this podcasting. Am I entering into the podcast just saying, well, we're just going to have a general relaxed conversation about what pros do? No, I want to give that more attention, hopefully so the conversation is helpful. Doesn't mean we can't have fun, with it all, but that we can give some real attention to this being the best that it can be, and that we can enter into a lot of our activities that way. And that doesn't have to come as a weight. It can just come as relaxed presence into what we do.
What's interesting about this, the idea of give attention to each shot, is I feel like there's three layers to it. There's the one you're saying of more focus and precision, where everything you're saying, instead of just thinking I'm going to hit a draw, I'm going to hit this shot, and what you just said. But then there's the other two of each shot, the level of it, where I'm infamous. I've gotten better, thankfully, of being horrible at layups and punch outs.
Right.
Like I would not think about it, and I would I would put myself in a horrible position because I decided to lay up because I was like, whatever, it's just a layup, and would write it off. And so each shot, like the tee shot, the approach shot, a punch out of the woods, a chip, a putt, all of those having this intentionality and focus to it. But then there's also this third piece of it's almost blinders on each side of the shot, where they're not sitting over their second shot thinking, I really meant to hit this 10 yards left and I would have had a better angle in. It's here I'm at now. And they're setting themselves up for the putt, but they're not thinking about the putt yet. You know what I mean? It's each one that way. And I just think I don't do that even close to halfway well.
AA talks about one day at a time, and we're talking about one shot at a time, which then translates to one hole at a time. For the pros, it's one round at a time. Then after that, so we have these different units, and as important as that relaxed presence is, it's dependent on us letting go of the shot before,
right?
Not worrying about what's going to come after. So all of this stuff flows in to one another. That we give that level of precision. I heard someone, actually it was Tiger, I think, talking about Scotty Scheffler. He was talking about this tremendous round that Scotty Scheffler had, just, near perfect. And he was talking with Scotty after the round, and he went, I had a really good round, except that 1.5-iron. That 1.5-iron, I didn't think about it. I didn't give that the attention. So out of 68 shots or whatever, he was haunted by one shot that he didn't think carefully about. My gosh, I'd be doing well in a round to have one shot I did give that attention to. That's the gulf that exists between how the pros play and how we play, which that gulf is the opportunity. And we had that same opportunity in our lives to both enjoy, excel, and do so much better, in the activities of our life.
And I would venture to say, my guess would be that Scotty Scheffler didn't think about that 5-iron shot again until after the round was over.
Yeah.
And that's when it haunted. You know what I mean? Like I bet that he flushed it for the rest of the round.
Right.
And then revisited it when he was reflecting.
Yeah, my guess is he executed what we were talking about in that other episode, the memory box, that he hit that shot and went, man, that I was just not there. And he absolutely, probably beat himself up for about 10 seconds. And then he went, okay, I got get back at it. Get back at it. And he probably, as you say, didn't think about it until after the round and went, you know what? I got to do better. I can't let that happen. I maybe got away with that one, but I won't get away with it next time.
And it's also interesting because I bet that he hit some other shots that weren't technically perfect.
Sure.
But he was upset that he didn't give that one the attention, the focus. And that was where his problem was, that it was like the mental error that was controllable for him instead of just an outcome that could have happened where.
Yeah. One of the great golf teachers systems out there is Decade by Scott Fawcett. And one of the processes that Scott Fawcett talks about to play our best game, and his system is phenomenal, is a mental scorecard. And that mental scorecard is giving ourselves some type of, in essence, a 1 to 5 rating on our level of commitment and focus on each individual shot. And so how many shots could we give ourselves a perfect score in a round to say I was completely thought through and focused and prepared for that shot? It doesn't matter where it went. Was I prepared for that shot? And how well we would do if we could take that average score, let's say from a 3 to a 4.
Right.
How much better we would be. It's, again, the same thing true in our lives. If we wouldn't just kind of glide through all of our day, at the same level of semi-focus, but we could give focus, relax, and give that relaxed presence. The next time you go to have lunch or breakfast with a friend, that you can have all distraction put aside and give full relaxed presence to that person that's sitting right in front of you, to your spouse, to your kids. How much better would life be?
And realizing, I think a lot of times it's like you're going to look up and you're like, the last hour I was just on autopilot. And at that moment, there's like the choice of, well, what do I do now? For this next hour, not do I beat myself up and then miss the next hour because I was mad that I didn't do well the hour before, because that's what I do in a golf game a lot of times,
Yeah. Well, I admit, I think, in my earlier adult years, I missed a lot of incredible opportunities with my kids because I was multitasking in my mind while I was playing with them. That was, in my mind, something that I did kind of want to do, and play with them, but I felt like the weight of the world was causing me to have to do 2 things at once, at least in my mind. And, I missed out, in many ways, many times by having that. So, again, golf is a fun game and I love to make it the best, but it's life where this stuff really, comes to play, where the rubber meets the road. Yeah. Yeah. So we have one more, what pros do. And in some ways we could say this, you could argue this is the most important. I mean, I think they're all important. If we put all of the others into play, we could risk feeling like we're becoming robotic, in a round of golf. We're going through these rhythms, through these routines, through this presence, through this focus, and you can almost feel kind of getting tired thinking about it all. But what really separates the pros so often is their ability to take some of these things and do it their own way, to have their own personality behind it, to have their own strategy behind it, to do everything from their routine to their strategy to their emotions to the way they talk to their caddies. They all have their own way of going about it. And I think one of the beauties of what we're talking about and of the game of golf and of life is finding our own way of doing it, our own way of being a dad, of being a spouse, of being an employer or an employee, of enjoying our weekends or our nights or doing things our own way. And I think the best pros really maximize this part. They are who they are. And we can point to some different examples. So I'd be curious if there's anybody that just jumps off the page for you that you go, you know what? That guy does it his way.
Yeah, well, there's definitely that. But I think one of the things that was striking me even before that was we were talking about being a child and emulating. It's like at the very beginning, you just copy.
Yes.
You take it and then you emulate it and you do exactly what you saw. I think about like even a kid at a table that just starts laughing because everyone else is laughing. They have no idea what the joke was, but they're laughing because that's what everyone else is doing.
Right.
And then over time, I think we lose the emulation, but our opportunity is to still take it and then figure out how do we adapt this thing that's really good and helpful and apply it in my own way for my own game. And I think this point is essentially what the whole episode can even be about too, where when you watch the pros, well, I'm not trying to be Bryson DeChambeau or Tiger Woods or whoever, but I have so much I can learn from them. And so how do I take it and then apply it to me? And I think that's kind of a cool thing where, bringing the whole episode together.
What do I imitate and shape into who I am?
Right.
Including emotions, and including, the pace that you walk or how fast you swing. This is me. What can I take from how the other pros do and mold it into who I am?
Because you were mentioning at the beginning of the episode that where we most commonly emulate as adults are the things that should not be our own game. It's copying someone's swing or not these intangibles that are or not even intangibles, not these principles that exist throughout a game that we can emulate. So it's just funny. It's like the opportunity that we have to learn from pros is what we don't take advantage of.
Well, and you think about it, probably one of the biggest complaints about professional golf now is that they're just all so robotic. But who do we, often kind of resonate with? Those personalities that come out, the Bryson DeChambeaus, whether you like him or not, or the Phil Mickelsons, or certainly Tiger. Tiger was so expressive and we get so excited and we go along with those. And then who do we beat up on? Patrick Cantley.
Right.
Whether that's fair or not, he's doing it his way. But we want, people to come out. And, I think Bryson, for instance, would say he kind of came into his own as he let himself be himself. And when he started to let himself be himself, then he was having more fun. He was playing better. Everything kind of came together when he said, you know what? I'm going to be myself. And you know what? One of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to become a Hulk.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do
physics,
something
unlike anyone else.
Yeah, and everybody said, "Well, you can do that, but you're going to ruin your golf game." And then he went to the 2020 U.S. Open.
Yeah,
U.S. Open is the one place you can't overpower because they have those 8-inch tall roughs, and they said, if anybody is not going to excel, Bryson can't do it. Well, he just completely overpowered it. He hit it so far down, it didn't matter they was in the rough, and he ran away with the whole tournament. He played it his way.
Okay, if I want to put you on the spot here, could you think of a few examples of people, maybe even tournaments that exemplified this really well, of just like playing their own game, maybe like that Bryson example?
Yeah. Well, Bryson's, U.S. Open. The one that I think of also, I think I made a note of it. It was the 2007 Masters where Zach Johnson won. Mm-hmm. And if you go back, the Masters, even back in those days, was, a long course for how far people were hitting it there. And the general wisdom of the Masters is that you can't win it unless you play the par fives well. The par fives are where you can excel. You just get through the par threes and the par fours because the par fives are real gettable. So Zach Johnson's strategy, because he's not a long hitter, was to lay up on every par five. And everybody said, you cannot play Augusta National laying up on the par fives as a professional. It just won't work. But he committed to that. And for 4 rounds, he did not go for the green in 2 on a single par 5. And there were multiple times where he could have reached the green in 2. But his strategy, because he knew who he was, and he knew that he excelled with his wedge game, was, no, here's how I'm going to do it. And he won, completely counter to what everybody thought of, the Masters as a short hitter laying up on par fives. But he knew who he was. Yeah. He knew his game, and he played his game that week.
Counterintuitive to what everyone thought, and counter to the Bryson point that was the exact opposite. But both of them were playing into their strengths.
Yeah, and Brian Harman recently won the U.S. Open the same way. Brian Harman he's just tiny left-handed player, and he hits his driver probably shorter than a lot of the pros hit their 3-woods. So he hit driver all the time, but he won by playing his game. Driver off every tee because he always hits it straight, and just kept it in play, and won the U.S. Open. His game, and it's boggles my mind that a Brian Harman at his distance could win a U.S. Open, but he plays his game. And, you could, I think if you really dug down into almost every pro, they have their game. They may look kind of similar, but they could tell you what is very specific to their game that they play to very specifically. Right.
Or the flip side is, I feel like whenever they talk about down years or dark years, it's when they feel like they've lost their identity as a golfer.
Yes.
So I think it's the inverse is true too. It's like when they're at their best and when they're performing, it's when they know, and when they feel like their game's the worst, it's when they've lost that.
Yeah. I had a really fun conversation with friends, taking it over to the life side. My passion in life is teaching, is, people probably groan and go, oh yeah, I know he really loves teaching. So I love teaching, but I have a kind of a way of teaching. I have stuff that I do in preparation, the way I think about, preparing for whatever it is, whether it's a Bible study or, going to a company and talking about something that really, really works for me. Well, I'm getting ready to teach a class, a Bible study class with 2 friends. And we had this incredible conversation over lunch as we were talking about it, our different styles of teaching. And so one friend loves to prepare, but when it comes down to it, after doing all of the preparation, brings it all down to one note card with 4 little points, and has it all in his mind about how he is going to prepare getting down to this one thing. So it's all kind of in there, but then he improvises as it goes. The other person, good friend that's been on this podcast many times, she loves to be very, very spontaneous. And she thinks about everything that she's going to teach at great depth, but then she allows the Spirit to come and really guide when it comes down to it. So 3 different people who all love and are passionate about teaching, who have their own way to operate at their best as they teach. That's the same thing that we're talking about with golf. And each person has a form of that for their own lives, how they parent, how they operate best at their work. And it's worth giving attention and naming, to be your best.
Yeah. And then the layer of growing in it and developing in your lane. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where it doesn't mean, well, like, it's just the way that I am. Like, that's it, period.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is your style, but then how do you grow and develop and I guess better yourself in that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which, obviously should happen,
Right.
but happens in your lane.
Right. That's what I mean. Where
Yeah.
I think sometimes we tend to make it, well, I need to make my golf swing, my golf game like this if I want to grow.
Yeah.
Or this is just the way that my game is, that's all it is, period. And neither one of those are doing ourselves a service.
Well, and we've had this conversation with you about things that you're doing and giving yourself to, and talking about, well, I'm doing all of these things, but this is really my lane. This is what really excites me, to give myself to. And talking about, okay, how can we do less of this and more of this? So it's a great way of thinking about it. And I would really encourage people who are listening to not only think about kind of, what's the best part of your golf game and how can you maximize that strength and lean into that, both in terms of your personality as well as your skill set, but also how does that play into the rest of your life, to live your best life, because that's what matters.
I love it. These have been great. So we've got slowing down, learning from pros that they slow down. We've got staying disciplined, have regulating emotions, staying present, and playing our own game or their own game.
Yeah, and if you think about it, what that whole picture looks like is playing golf with heart, mind, and emotions. Our emotions get into it, our minds get into it, and our bodies get into it. All 3 of those have to operate at our best. And if we treat golf as just a physical skill, we won't play our best and we really won't even enjoy it the most. So heart, mind, body is what I meant to say. Heart, mind, body is what having all of these work in sync with one another, both in our golf games and in our life.
I like that. I think personally, all of them would be really helpful. I'm really excited to lean into slowing down. I think in life and in golf.
Yes. So that would be, really kind of the takeaway is we as human beings are not really typically capable of having 5 things in our mind and trying to do 5 things, new all at once. So I would encourage people, and these will be in the show notes, kind of these 5 major categories, to take one and say, this is the one that I really have the opportunity to grow in. And even just take a round of golf and say, for this round of golf, I'm going to give particular focus to this part of it. Might be your emotions, it might be your pace of play, the focus with a rhythm of rest. But pick one of them and say, yeah, for this round of golf, I'm going to still have fun with my friends and everything else, and I'm going to still try. But this is what's going to be kind of my focus for this round of golf.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm going to have more snacks. I think that should be on the list too.
It probably should be at the top of your list. All right, great. Well, thanks everybody. I hope there's some helpful things for you to glean, both for your golf game and maybe for some area of your life. So take this along with you. Share this episode with others, and we'll be back next week.